Welcome to another episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what movies inspired it. And today on the show, we are talking about Love Lies Bleeding from director-writer Rose Glass, starring Kristen Stewart and Katy O'Brien. This is a fun one to get into. This is a weird one. It's an A24 film. We got a lot of puzzle pieces to get into. Joining me to talk about it, we've got Daniel Barrios from The Movies, and we have a really fun conversation. So that's coming up here in a second. Before we get to it, I do want to remind you, as always, to make sure you are subscribed to Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts. You can follow us on social media at PiecingPod and join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, where we continue the conversation about all the movies we talk about here on the show. We also have a Patreon, the Produced by David Rosen Patreon, where I post bonus and advanced content from Piecing It Together, Awesome Movie Year, and my music career. I've also been posting video versions of these episodes, advanced video versions of these episodes, exclusive advanced video versions of these, because I'm not planning on releasing the video versions anywhere else. So, it's all of those words strung together into a thing that is exclusively on the Patreon. So if you want to, support the show in that way, not only would I appreciate it, but you get access to some really cool stuff. So check it out. It's patreon.com/bydavidrosen. And with that said, let's get into our conversation on Love Lies Bleeding. All right, Daniel from The Movies is back with us. We're going to talk about Love Lies Bleeding. Daniel, it's been a while. How you doing?
I come on the show once every couple of years, it seems, but it's always a good time.
Yeah.
Like it's your old buddy from college coming down for one good rager every once in a while.
I'm ready. Let's inject each other with some steroids and have a good time.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
This movie is
first. Yes, for sure. We got to figure that out. This movie is going to be a wild one to get into, I think. A lot going on in this one, but I had a blast with this movie. What was your history? Were you a fan of Rose Glass, Saint Maud? Were you a fan of her other stuff before this?
Oh, hell yeah. Rose, that was a movie that I just kind of stumbled on at home and immediately fell in love with her approach to it. I love how unapologetic she is about some of these horror conventions that she absolutely destroys. It's one of the only movies that, everybody says that y'all need more Jesus. That's the quote. And I think Rose Glass was the one that said, no, y'all need less Jesus, and made an entire movie about how that can be distorted. I love her willingness to just go completely head first into surreality in a film that's otherwise pretty, stable.
Yeah.
And
which is funny because I went into this movie not expecting surreality, and sure enough, I should have, because of her last movie. I should have known that something weird would happen.
I think more so with this one, it's because the movie isn't out and out a horror film, because I feel like Saint Maud was marketed as that horror movie, so I think there's that expectation going in, but this one feels more akin to just like a regular old crime thriller type thing, so it feels a little bit more grounded in the approach, or at least in the presentation or the expectation.
Sure, absolutely. Well, you know what? There's going to be a lot to get into. We might as well just start getting into some puzzle pieces. What do you have for your first piece for Love Lies Bleeding?
The first one, and I'm sorry to the world, but I've got to do it. Twilight. Specifically, we're spoilers on this show, right? Okay.
Yes, spoiler away.
There's this moment near the end of the movie where Lou, played by Kristen Stewart, is on the ground. The villain, played by Ed Harris, is right over her, and she's got a bullet wound in her leg, and Ed Harris does the terrible villain thing of digging his finger inside the wound. She screams, and that's what motivates her protector Jackie to rush in like a superhero and save the day. And there's that one bit in Twilight whenever James Vampire is got Bella inside a dance studio, and then he stomps on her foot and he's scream for me, and she's ah! And that's the thing that gets Edward to come in and save the day. So I sat there giggling my ass off because, come on, You got if anyone is self-aware about what her legacy is, it's absolutely Kristen Stewart.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's funny because like I haven't seen those movies since they came out. I watched them all, opening weeks or whatever. But like I don't think back to them as being gnarly. But like that scene, connecting those scenes, it's like you think back to it and think, I guess that's pretty
Man,
gnarly.
Catherine Hardwicke wasn't fucking around. My wife and I watch these
Yeah.
movies as like part of our Halloween season, just like comfort
Hmm.
films. And every time I watch that movie in particular, Catherine Hardwicke's Twilight, it's so much more like grungy and weird and like so much like so many more handheld cameras and just like a willingness to get kind of like gross and that deep blue filter. It looks like it completely takes away from like the Hollywood polish of the time. And so I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's an admirable movie despite the source material not being so great.
Yeah, sure, why not? But yeah, no, I love that you brought it up here. That is great, and I mean, Kristen Stewart, great actress. She has more than proven herself. But yes, that is going to be there for her whole career. There's no getting around it. Which, by the way, good jumping off point to one of my puzzle pieces. I might as well jump to this one first. Robert Pattinson also not shedding the Twilight past ever, in his career, no matter what he does. But I'm going with Good Time, the Safdie brothers film. Also a crime thriller that things just keep going worse from bad to worse to worse. The character gets deeper and deeper. No matter how much Kristen Stewart here tries to dig herself out, she just gets herself dug more and more deep into all of the problems with her father and the crime and deaths and murders and drugs and all the things that happen in this movie. There's also some specific shots that felt like they were maybe knowingly referencing good time. I felt like there's one scene where they're driving away at night and the camera like pans up really high up above the city and you see the car almost like a little toy
That's
driving
what I
around
was
with its
thinking.
headlights. That was a really cool shot and it totally reminded me of Good Time right there. So I think maybe it's a little bit knowing, but certainly the two of them as actors, as people, are just they're tied together, and so I think you kind of have to have some of each in each other's films.
Yeah, they're a power couple, whether they like it or
They
not.
are.
Actually, bringing up Good Time, the way that movie deals with anxiety, just the
Mm,
pulsing of it, the way that momentum never really lets you breathe, and even when you do, it's kind of this level of discomfort. This whole movie had that. That's kind of what kind of kept
yeah,
it going, and because so much of it is pieced from Lou and Jackie's brains, both of them being highly insecure and anxious people, that good time
yeah.
connection makes so much sense.
I would imagine, I already mentioned the steroids, but I would imagine that has something to do with their anxiety as well. But yeah, no, absolutely. That's something, obviously the Safdie brothers, are always connected with and is very prevalent in Good Time for sure. But what do you got for your next piece?
I'm gonna do like a piece and a half because I forgot that I had put another
Sure.
Twilight movie like in the bottom of this thing, so I'm gonna tack this on. So that
Sure.
bit in New Moon when Edward is like appearing to Bella inside like these little visions, and she's seeing him, and he's like, "Don't be danger, Bella." They flip that on its head
Mm,
here when Jackie looks off into. She's nervous behind the curtain at her bodybuilding competition. She looks over and Lou's just like, fucking get it. Even though she's not there. It's
yeah.
like, okay, that's cute. That's a cute, like a
Yeah.
little inverse. My real pick right now
Hmm.
would be Near Dark, Catherine Bigelow's movie that I just saw for like the first time this month.
I've actually never seen it. I've always wanted to. It's been on high up on
It's
my list, but
so good. And you have
yeah.
really no idea how good it is until you like really like dive into it. It's this vampire
Mm,
western basically takes place in the desert. This guy hits on this girl and the girl's kind of weird and spacey, but it's the 80s. He's got a truck and he's trying to fuck. So they go
mm,
spend some time together, and when they make out, she bites him, and suddenly he's brought into her world. She's got this crazy family with Lance Henriksen and Bill Paxton as like the coolest yet creepiest motherfuckers in the world, like these vampire clan that's just going off. And so the way I connect it to Love Lies Bleeding is that there is that sort of grainy desert feel throughout Love Lies Bleeding. And however Lou introduces Jackie to these steroids, and the way that it's not just the introduction to the steroids and Jackie's eventual addiction to those steroids that get her kind of like roped into this. It's also Lou inadvertently introducing Jackie to her world and to this this criminal underbelly. Like Jackie just came in from out of town, but it feels almost like a Venus flytrap of sorts. Like this town is just putrefying from the inside out, and everything that comes inside of it just gets caught. And so that feeling of the way the addiction works, the way that the character gets sucked into events and that they can't really control, it echoes Near Dark to me. Love Lies Bleeding does.
So what you're saying with these first two puzzle pieces is that this movie reminds you of vampire movies.
So many vampire movies
so
yes.
far.
I like vampires.
I wonder if we'll have any more coming up, hopefully. But yeah, no, I really want to see that. And I've always thought it looked awesome. And I mean, Bill Paxton, who doesn't want to see that?
Might be my favorite. Might be my favorite Bill Paxton. He's so much fun.
Can't wait. I'm going to get this one out of the way because I think you kind of can't talk about a very heavy lesbian-based thriller without talking about Bound, the Wachowskis' 1996 film with Jennifer Tilly and Gina Gershon. A very noir-inspired crime thriller about two lesbians who, again, kind of like what I was talking about with Good Time, their situation just keeps getting more and more fucked up as the story goes, no matter how hard they try to stay ahead of everything that's going on. It just keeps falling apart and keeps getting more and more screwed up. And I think, that movie was super ahead of its time. And, we're seeing more and more things kind of come out. I mean, just this year alone, we just had Drive Away Dolls, which is another, lesbian, more of a comedy, but, a lesbian road trip kind of movie. We also had Eileen at the end of the year, which I loved that movie. So we're seeing more and more stuff like that happen, but Bound is definitely a groundbreaking movie for that kind of thing. And the Wachowskis fill it with so much style. And, we were talking already about the surreal aspects of what Rose Glass brings to this. She really brings a lot of style to this movie. And, that's something with the Wachowskis, like you always expect, but it's hugely on display there.
A huge blind spot on my era, but I think the only thing I could bring to this is that goddamn that Criterion collection coming out, I think in June. That cover is fucking sick. Like the blood splatter. Like I don't know what the white. I don't know if the white is supposed to represent milk or something, but like I'm totally willing to just let the movie go. And that cover looks great. That's a big blind spot for me. Something that I really want to catch up with because I like the Wachowski stuff.
I think you'll like it for sure. What do you got for your next piece?
I've got the Hulk. I've got Hulk from 2003.
Nice. Yeah.
You can't really get out of talking about Love Lies Bleeding without talking about the nature of the surreality, which stems from Jackie. Jackie being a character whom grew up in a powerless environment, foster care, since a pretty young age, like a young formative age too. I think she mentions it was 13 or foster care since she was 13. And so those big
something
formative
like that,
years that she grew up just kind of bouncing from place to place. She's got these incredible anger issues, anxiety. And one of the things that's in the background of some shots is this idea of if you can see it, you'll believe it. If pain is weakness leaving the body, it's starts out with sort of like these gym posters and these metaphors for like, your mind can control your body. But what Rose Glass does is represent that idea in Jackie literally. So Jackie's
Sure.
body
Yeah.
will morph as she takes steroids, and like the muscles will grow. And I think Kristen Stewart makes reference to her being Popeye, eating your spinach at some point. And so in Jackie's
Yeah.
mind, yeah,
Yep.
anytime she's in danger, anytime that she needs to defend Lou or work, she just starts growing bigger and bigger until the very end of the movie where she becomes a giantess. And I love the little
Yes.
foreshadowing that they did on the TV screen with that little giant woman cartoon that scooped up the bad guy and he's wriggling and whatnot. Yeah.
Sure.
So all of that.
I think it was Gulliver's
Yeah.
Travels, if I'm not
That's probably right.
mistaken.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that. I
And
love
so,
that.
you watch the Hulk from 2003, you watch sort of like the bulbous, muscly transformation of that character. Because it's not quite perfect Marvel CG. It doesn't really quite
Hmm.
hit. But that also lends itself to sort of like, again, the cartoon reference and the fact that it's her mind sort of imagining herself being so large and so strong that nothing can oppose her. And so the
Yeah.
way that her
Yeah.
mind perceives herself in that moment, whenever she finally takes down Ed Harris, is she literally that big? No. I'm gonna say no. But
Meh,
I mean, I didn't
maybe.
see any giant fucking footprints after they started walking away, so that's what I'm going with. But
Yeah,
I
sure.
loved that bit of surreality, and in a movie that is so representative of a character's headspace, I just thought, from what people were saying about this like Bonzo Gonzo ending, I didn't think it was really that far out of left field.
Right. I agree with you actually because like yeah, so I might as well just throw this right on top here. I was thinking of Birdman as
Nice.
far as
Love
fantastical
that movie.
elements that are are they imagined, are they not? It's really is it even happening for the characters or is it just for us, the audience member? Like we don't know if Kristen Stewart really thinks that she's big in that moment or not. Like it's just something that we're seeing. It's a movie. Things like this can happen in movies, and why not have fun with making a movie? So I thought of Birdman in a movie where that final shot, we really have no idea, that we're not even clued in a little bit whether or not it's real. There's plenty of little red herrings you can look at and try to decide for yourself, but there's never going to be a definitive answer. But I love that about this movie, that we obviously have just lived through 15 years of superhero movies being the dominant, art form of movies, I guess. And it's kind of dying a little bit right now. And I think that this is an interesting counterpoint to what we've been seeing all this time. And so I think, the Hulk as, an example of exactly what it's kind of going after. And it's kind of doing a more, I want to say grounded, even though it's got this kind of supernatural aspect to it. But like more of a thriller, more of a genre picture. Is It's not like it's not a big blockbuster, but it still can have fun with these kinds of effects and these kinds of character beats.
Yeah, it's the thing that makes that kind of stuff with Birdman work. Again, it's such an like interior film, and it is performative because Riggin is
Hmm.
being he's performing to everyone in his life, including himself,
Yeah,
because he doesn't have a solid identity. So his ego is taking over him as well as the
sure.
character. And I like,
And isn't that the same for bodybuilding though?
yes,
So
well, at least
yeah,
for Jackie, because I think
yeah.
I was interested in this, and I'm probably diving into waters that I really don't know much about. So I'm just gonna go try to hit this as surface level as possible. I wonder how
Hmm.
trans folks feel about Jackie and bodybuilding in
Hmm.
general. The idea of like, I was thinking, the injecting oneself with steroids can be like a representation for hormones, and like the idea of like
Sure.
sculpting yourself. In Jackie's case, almost literally, like you hear the way bodybuilders talk about themselves, like I'm working on my glutes and then I'm working on my upper quad. Like they've got this thing down to a science,
Yeah.
and so they're sculpting kind of the vision they want to see of themselves. In Jackie's case, she really wants to be superhuman. She wants to be so
Yeah. Yeah.
powerful again that nobody could touch her, that nobody
Yeah.
could bully her, nobody could hurt her because she's gotten that in her past. And so I was thinking about like how people would look at this character if they were trans, and seeing Jackie
Yeah.
as like, oh, this is someone that's building the best version of themselves that they want to have. so I'll do it too.
Sure.
I don't know. It's a thought.
Yeah, being the person that they feel that they are, and like putting that into the world. Yeah, I hadn't thought about this as a puzzle piece or anything, but like hearing you talk about like creating that image of yourself, I was thinking of Arnold Schwarzenegger in Pumping Iron, which is just the best.
Yeah.
That movie is so great. But that's a bit of a tangent. But I threw Birdman in there. What do you got for your next
I'm
piece?
gonna do like a mini one. Nacho Vigalo's Colossal, 2017, starring Anne Hathaway
Oh yeah.
as a woman who watches the news, discovers that there's a kaiju all the way across the world, and suddenly learns that in her living room she can control the kaiju. Like if the kaiju scratches its head, it's because Anne Hathaway is scratching her head. And so I chose
Yeah.
Colossal, a movie that I'm not really that fond of, as an
Mm.
example of a movie that unabashedly takes genre and uses it to sort of describe these difficult issues with like domestic
Hmm.
violence and abuse in Colossal. And in this movie, that whole like damaged psyche of Jackie now being used in sort of like these horror conventions. Like there are moments in this movie where Jackie is fully monstrous, and I mean that like as like one of the old school creatures. You know, she's like
Yeah.
werewolf almost. She's like Michael Myers. She's like towering. And it's funny from I think I heard that Katy O'Brien is like 5'7". And so there's this great forced perspective shot where you're looking at it from Dave Franco's point of view. And shout out to Dave Franco being a wonderfully terrible piece of shit, who's also like
Oh
short as
yeah.
hell, so
Hell
that
yeah.
makes this thing work. It's this towering shot where she's like ready to deliver the death blow, and it looks, demonic almost. And
Yeah.
it's all because of this really damaged psyche that never has had a time to, or the support to really handle her issues. Like Katie needs
Mm.
meds, not Katie, sorry. Everybody needs therapy. I'm sorry, Katy O'Brien. I love you. I have undying loyalty to you. You're an incredible actress. Jackie needs therapy. Jackie needs like
Yeah.
psychiatric help, and she hasn't gotten that because she's been on the run and she's been alone for so long that to see that damaged mind through the lens of like a horror filmmaker or somebody who's willing to look at it like a superpower of sorts, the need to be stronger and to be a bodybuilder, that kind of represents the way that Colossal takes those genre conventions and applies it to its very human and grounded story, or at least in Anne Hathaway's head.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I love that. I love that, and I love that we're seeing movies like this that take chances like this. Like Rose Glass is definitely an example of that. We talked about it with Saint Maud. That was another movie that does that, where it goes in places that you just wouldn't have expected it to go, and that's just the most exciting stuff. And I love Colossal. I think it's a great movie, and I'm glad you brought it up here. It's a great piece. Um, I will go. I have to include Burn After Reading on my list here,
Nice.
as far as gym employees and their patrons getting mixed up in crime. There's a lot of Coen brothers here.
Yes.
I don't think it's the only Coen
Yes.
brother that you could include. You can include a lot of their stuff, but you've got The Small Town, you got The Idiots, you just mentioned Dave Franco. You've got the kind of noir feel to the whole thing. You've got, Crimes Gone Wrong that, people just keep digging themselves deeper. But really, it's the gym connection here, which is why I wanted to include Burn After Reading, even though all those things are hallmarks of many, many Coen Brothers movies. I don't know. Are there any specific Coen Brothers movies other than Burn After Reading you want to throw on the list?
Yeah. Specifically, I was gonna go Llewyn Davis, which is one of my favorite movies of all
Nice.
time.
Oh,
Specifically,
hell yeah.
we've talked a lot about Jackie on this. I want to talk about Lou because Lou is
Hmm.
such a talk about a great like, how some characters in movies just have a thing that they do and it just sticks your
Hmm.
red. What a great little detail to have someone who's listening to self-help tapes to stop smoking while smoking a cigarette. That
Yeah, yeah.
contrast is so strong and immediately understands the kind of person Lou is. Lou is the person
Yeah.
that wants to get out of her rut, that absolutely knows deep down in her bones that she doesn't want to be in this town. She doesn't want to be under the thumb of her father. She really doesn't want to be, her sister's keeper, but yet she finds herself with these actions that she takes that she cannot escape. And very much how
Hmm.
Lewin, given the opportunity to escape in some points, to live a good life with Carey Mulligan and to be responsible, and he just finds himself digging himself in the same fucking hole to the point where the movie ends in sort of like this cyclical nature. And so I found Lewin and Lou to have the same sort of like powerlessness to change their own shit. Some of it self-inflicted, some of it inflicted on by circumstance. I mean, you've got a tough rap being Lou. Your sister's getting beat up,
Yeah.
no one's doing anything about it. But then again, you know, I think Lou is one of those people that is really scared of taking that first step because I think she's scared of the consequences of what it would be to take the first action, real like vigilante action against JJ or against her father. Understandably, some
Yeah.
of these have like way larger consequences than the other one does, truly. But it's
Hmm.
that sort of like you're trying to help yourself, but you're too scared to like the idea of self-help tapes. Like somebody else made the tape so you can help yourself. That doesn't make fucking sense to me. But there is an entire
Right.
genre of literature and media that is built around this, that feeling that you're fixing your own problems by relying on someone else's words. It's that sort of
Yeah.
contrast and that I guess cyclical, nonsensical type of existence that just made Lewin
Yeah.
Davis speak out to me, for Lou particularly.
Lewin Davis is just so good, but yeah, I mean, to Lou's situation though, I didn't notice it until after the movie that her father is Lou
Neither
Senior,
did I.
and I feel like that like weighs down on her even, and like she seems like she really genuinely looked up to him at some point and
Interesting.
just could never get away from that, and this whole movie is her finally getting away from that, and it took all this craziness for that to happen, but yeah, no, I love that though. I love bringing Llewyn Davis in here, and like I said, plenty of Coen brothers could be thrown into the mix as well, but let's go to another piece. What do you got next?
Let's go with I'm gonna just do the environment, a series of puzzle pieces. I'm gonna do Casino, I'm gonna do Breaking Bad, and I'm gonna do Kill Bill Volume 2. Casino because desert, because hell imagery. The opening of Casino is just like the opening of like a descent into hell, and the opening of this
Yeah,
movie is the
sure.
opposite, which is an ascent from hell. That weird,
Mm,
what a great shot, opening shot, by the way, like crawling from the ravine to the beautiful starry sky. That's sort of like, this is
yeah,
the level that you're going to be dealing with. You're going to be dealing with some fucked up shit, and you're going to be dealing with some absolute beauty at the same time. Uh, Breaking
yeah.
Bad, because this is a movie that does New Mexico absolutely no favors. Between this, Breaking Bad, and like Better Call Saul, it's like if I see the New Mexico state line, I'm just gonna drive around, or I'm gonna drive. I'm,
Yeah,
I'm
just
just gonna
keep
drive
driving.
through it. I'm not gonna get stopped in New Mexico. Absolutely fucking not. I'm sorry. This is like an
Yeah.
anti-tourism ad, but hey, man,
Hmm.
get your shit straight. And then Kill Bill Volume 2, just because of the way that ending happens whenever the bride goes to meet Bill and the way that interaction goes at his house and that eerie sense of calm. And I think that
Hmm.
one's shot kind of like in desert area too. And just,
Sure. Yeah.
but it's mostly like that eerie feeling at the end where it's like you'd expect it to be some like gigantic bombastic conclusion, but it is kind of quiet and a lot
Mm.
of like the heaviness of she's basically going to this guy who's built an empire off of murder and and gun running for her entire life, and a place that ideally should feel like home to her just feels so alien not only to her but to us because we haven't seen anything like beautiful like that in the movie. Everything's always been sort of
Sure.
like the
Yeah.
small town and grungy and like dingy, and like there's a kids' toys out in the front lawn. But this is almost palatial in comparison. Even the place where
Hmm.
he works is a shithole. So I don't know, that
Yeah.
feeling of just being put in a place that's totally uncomfortable in the desert, good shit.
Yeah, you also get like a downpour of backstory of
Yeah.
Lou. Like you didn't really know that much of where she came from until the end of that movie, and then you're like, there's so much there that really I think a second viewing would probably help put all that together. But yeah, I mean, Kill Bill Volume 2, that's a great one to include here because I do think that Lou Senior, the way that Ed Harris plays him is a lot like David
Yeah.
Carradine's Bill.
Yeah.
That it definitely feels like that. And yeah, there's just like a calmness, a matter of factness to this guy. Like he is in control of everything at all times. You couldn't even possibly imagine to try to take anything from him or stop him or whatever. And
I love too that because Lou is so much like her father, that like Lou Senior is what happens when Lou just like swallows that little piece, that gulp in her throat that's like feels
mm,
apprehensive about, doing terrible things. Like Lou Senior is the person that thinks about solving a problem, like getting rid of a dead body, so matter of fact. Like I can imagine he
yeah,
has like an Excel, like a Word document that tells you step by step how to do it. And he did, but
yeah,
you can tell at one point, I think right before or right after she threatens him officially, that she's going to go to the cops and say everything. He finally like breaks a little bit and just gets upset because he finally realizes like the one person he can't control anymore is the person who most resembles himself. And so there is
yeah,
this moment of emotion there, but that tells me then that all the other times of emotion, when he's had to like shoot a guy or he's had to deal with his wife leaving him, she left, she died. That's one of those weird, like little. I think based on the way he plays it, that she genuinely did leave, and that was his one act of like mercy, so to speak, just letting her go. But
hmm
yeah, that uh, feeling that if Lou simply just like abandoned her decency, slowly over
yeah,
time she would morph into how cold he is and how manipulative she is. Because I mean, we see it with
yeah,
her and Daisy. We see like the little remnants of her manipulating her way to getting Daisy not to
sure.
talk. And I mean, it's not going to be anywhere near as forceful as he is eventually, but you see inklings of it, and I love
Yeah.
that.
You could almost look at the self-help tapes as like a half-hearted attempt to not turn into
That's
that,
true.
like it's her. She knows what she could be if she just completely lets herself go, but she's just trying a little bit to not get there.
Ah, that's
So
true. That's a good try. That's a good shot. I like that.
right on. I've got one last puzzle piece. I had to include this one. We're talking about a gym movie, so it had to be included here. Michael Bay's best movie, as far as I'm concerned, Pain and Gain.
Nice.
Uh, so Lou and Jackie are not bad people, though. But there are parallels between them and these idiots in Pain and Gain who get themselves caught up in this whole fucked up crime scenario, all centered around the gym that they all train at. And in a lot of ways, it's almost like an A24 Pain and Gain. It's like, what if a bunch of gym rats got themselves caught up in some shit and a whole bunch of murder happened and everything went to hell? That movie is so funny. Mark Wahlberg's probably never been better than that. The Rock definitely has never been better than that. And it just goes so crazy and so off the deep end. And this movie does go pretty damn off the deep end. We're talking about all the, the things that go down once the violence starts, and once she gets to that house, a lot of violence happens, and there's plenty of humor in it. There's, plenty of craziness, and I think, the parallels are pretty close together. And of course, you're not really supposed to root for those guys because they are pieces of shit, and it's based on a true story. But, still not that far off from all of the bodies that are left in in the wake of Lou and Jackie and the shit that got started because of them.
Another unfortunate blind spot for me. Although, as much as I fell in love with Ambulance a couple years ago,
Mm,
or
yes.
Ambu LA a
Yes.
couple years
Hell yeah.
ago, This is one that I've really need to get on. Yeah,
Yeah.
talking about the dark humor in this thing, everything that whenever the cat shows up, like she's whenever the
Yes.
cat shows up and she's hidden a body behind the couch and the cat's just like licking the blood off the floor, it's me and four other people on a Sunday evening, and I'm just the one laughing my ass off because it's so silly. And yeah, there's a lot of like little silly moments like that in this that uh give a good sense of humor to the whole thing.
Yeah,
And yeah, that's a solid pick.
absolutely. I also loved Ed Harris eating the bug. I mean, you just
Dude.
knew it was eventually going to happen, but
Ed Harris eating the bug like a Funyun. I love it.
so disgusting. Do you have any other puzzle pieces you wanted to bring up?
I mean, there's like the Iron Claw, just because any sepia slash burnt orange slash caramel lit scene taking place in a gym, like specifically the shot
Mm,
of Lou doing paperwork at the end of the night, I was like, oh, okay, there's
yeah.
Kevin. And then I've got that bit in Prisoners, whenever you first see Paul Dano's face after like what Hugh Jackman's done to him, is like every time they would cut back to Jenna Malone in the hospital and the swollen face that Dave Franco
Oh
gave her after
God.
beating, the effect of
Yeah.
that, just going like, oh, Jesus Christ. And like that
Yeah.
pit in your stomach when you know like something horrifically fucked up has happened. I got that. Uh, there's a level to Jackie's manipulation by Ed Harris and partially by Lou that made me think this is gonna be a weird one for y'all. Takashi Miike's Ichi the Killer,
Oh
because
boy.
that movie features a cop who manipulates his mentally unstable but incredibly physically strong brother in order to kill Yakuza members and
Mm.
horrific, violent ways. And I found like the way that Ed Harris was sort of using Jackie's insecurity to get inside of her head kind of resembled and
Mm.
do his dirty work essentially resembled a little bit of that. I think
That's
I think
interesting.
there's
Yeah.
way more of like uh mentally like mental ability handicap in Ichi the Killer and less of like a psychiatric bent that Jackie has, but it reminded me of those movies. And if you haven't seen Ichi the Killer, holy fucking shit, man! It's like Scorsese level, like it's Goodfellas good to me, but it's completely off the fucking walls. Like the opening sequence, you have never seen a title sequence like Ichi the Killer. If you've never seen it, there's an opening title sequence that's just like, what the fuck? In the best way. In the best way. I love that movie.
I haven't seen it since college. I need to rewatch it.
God damn.
I
You'll
yeah.
never look at
I'm
tempura the
excited.
same way again.
Hell yeah, I gotta watch that. That sounds amazing. I will read down our list of puzzle pieces here. We'll get into some closing thoughts here on Love Lies Bleeding. We talked about Twilight, of course, and Good Time. Also Twilight New Moon. Near Dark, Bound, The Hulk, Birdman, Colossal, Burn After Reading, Inside Llewyn Davis, Casino, Breaking Bad, Kill Bill Volume 2, Pain and Gain, The Iron Claw, Prisoners, and Ichi the Killer. Whole bunch of crazy shit, honestly, across the board. But yeah, I don't know. Any closing thoughts? Anything we didn't quite get into you wanted to mention?
We didn't really get into like the romance of it. How do you feel about that? One of the criticisms I saw of this movie was like the whole queer love is a superpower thing. They didn't quite buy the love. And I don't buy the love in the same way, but I think it's because these are two codependent people that are just like
Mm,
clinging on
yeah,
to each other for what they need. I think Lou is the person who is craving power and found it physically and emotionally in Jackie, like somebody to actually like give her the strength to, go for it. And Jackie, I really
yeah.
just think needed support, like somebody to love her because she hasn't felt that.
Mm,
And Lou gave her a little bit of that. And so while they aren't quite perfect for each other And I
Sure.
genuinely, based on the end of the movie, I genuinely don't know how that relationship's gonna work out.
No.
It's it's nice, I would say. They at least found each other, and I'll go with that.
Sure, sure. Yeah, no, that's almost as surreal as her turning into a giant. Like, it's like, how is this relationship actually going to work on the road, on the run? You kind of can't even think about it. It's just a genre movie, you know, and like that's all it is to it. And I think that's probably why, romance wise, the relationship didn't bother me at all because to me, it's a crime thriller first, and it just so happens to be about these characters who are lovers, and there's that aspect to their character as well. But I think it's mostly a thriller that goes in some really crazy directions, but at the same time is kind of just stuck in that one specific gear of just being a small town fucked up crime gone wrong situation.
I do think there's more to the romance that maybe I'm not like touching on or haven't really found yet, because I think you're right. I think the movie like could be that sort of fucked up crime thriller that's gone wrong. But I think there's a layer under that where the movie is
Hmm.
genuinely trying to break out and be about like these two people connecting and finding each other. They just so happen to be unable to get there yet. If there were technically like a sequel to this movie, I think we'd get more of that. I think once life finally starts to kind of like calm down for these people, maybe if they got their shit together and got some therapy and were able to be
Or would
lifted
Lou
on.
get back into the same cycle,
Maybe.
and would yeah, and would Jackie destroy herself?
And
Like I
Lou
think that's more likely.
destroy
Yeah,
herself
I
and
guess
Lou.
both.
Yeah,
Yeah,
a lot of
yeah.
blood.
So that's why it's more fun to just take it as a crime gone
I
wrong.
love how we got. I love how we got all the way to the end of the episode and we didn't talk once about the sex scenes because, like,
I
Jesus
mean,
Christ, oh
yeah,
my
I mean,
God,
there's
there's
a
a
lot of
lot
that
to
too.
enjoy for folks. If you're into
Yeah.
muscles, if you're into women, if you're
Hmm.
lesbian, like, God bless you. It's your time. And Rose Glass
Yeah.
is just I loved that Rose Glass made it so sensual without ever feeling exploitative. It might have been like
Yeah.
exploitative like in concept. Like there's some dirty shit that's said, but
Hmm.
you never get pornographic with it. You know what I mean? I don't
Sure.
know. Just and it doesn't help that this
Hey.
episode like is recorded on the day that they dropped that photo shoot that Kristen Stewart and Katy O'Brien had for them, where it was,
Oh, I haven't seen it yet.
dude, Kristen Stewart is like, there's a gif of like her pouring a beer into Katy O'Brien's mouth and like it waterfalls down her mouth and she's like licking it up with her chin. And I said, look, man, there's a level of attractiveness that threatens to destroy the earth as we know it, and you're getting
Mm.
dangerously fucking close.
That's
Holy
yeah, I
shit.
believe it. I believe it. Hey, I would just say with Driveway Dolls, I already mentioned it, but I mean, horny movies are maybe back in 2024, possibly. You know?
We're bringing back sex scenes in
Yeah,
2024,
lots of
and I'm
them.
totally down for
Lots of
it.
them.
God bless us. Let us horny sickos live.
There you go. Daniel, is there another movie you watched recently you'd like to recommend to our listeners?
Ooh, okay. I mean, I watched Dune, but Dune Part 2 is kind of like obvious. Like everybody's already seen that movie. Let me scroll through
Yeah.
Letterboxd real quick. I was watching this movie recommended to me by Morgan Roberts of the female gaze film club called The Women. It's from 1939. It stars like Norma
Oh,
Shearer and Joan
yeah.
Crawford and Rosalind Russell. And I haven't finished it yet, but it's great. It's this like catty movie about these friends who find out that like Nora Shearer's husband is cheating on her, and so,
Mm,
because these are your friends in quotations that just live to stir up drama, they're trying to
yeah.
like constantly bring it up at every turn. And then eventually Norma Shearer finds out and like starts having to interact with Joan Crawford, who's the woman who's cheating, who's the husband's cheating on her with. And it's just this really whip smart, quick, you have to watch it with subtitles. There's a million jokes flying at you a minute, a bunch of hilarious women. Norma Shearer, she'll break your heart. She's so sweet and so like like the perfect wife. Like, how could you dare cheat on this woman? And then you look at like Joan Crawford. Okay, my wife just pointed at her saying that's me. No, she's not Norma Shearer, friends. I'm not cheating on you with Joan Crawford. All right? I'm not cheating on you with fucking Mildred Pierce here. But no, it's a really, really solid movie. It's on Tubi, as everything good seems to be nowadays. So yeah, if you're into like just a comedy and like a really smart one at that, featuring a bunch of great actresses at the time, I'd recommend The Women.
Yeah, we actually just covered it over on Awesome Movie Year.
Oh, no fucking way!
Definitely. Yeah, check out The Women, everybody. And yeah, check that episode out. But yeah, Daniel, thanks so much for doing the show again. Tell people where they can find you and your podcast and everything else you're up to.
Hello, my name's Daniel Barrios. I host a show called The Movies. Yes, it is actually called just The Movies. God bless me. I looked at Google and Apple Podcasts. I was like, oh shit, nobody's done this? Great. I'm going to take it.
Why not?
I cover new movies. I interview folks. I'm going to be talking about Love Lies Bleeding myself and Immaculate at the end of the month. I'm covering Make Believe Seattle for the second year in a row, this film festival genre, a lot of sci-fi, a lot of horror, a bunch of cool shit. One of the things I'm really proud of is the interview I did with Heather Wixson and Patrick Bromley. They're the co-authors of the companion book to In Search of Darkness, this documentary series about the history of 80s horror movies. So if you want to listen to 2.5 hours of a bunch of nerds talking about 80s horror, that episode, I'm going to send y'all straight to it. It was so much fun and such an honor. But yeah,
hell yeah,
just come and hang out with me.
Beautiful. I'm looking forward to checking that episode out, actually. But yeah, thanks so much for being here, and hopefully it'll be not as long until the next time you're back.
I don't think it will. Thank you so much, David. It's always been a blast hanging out with you, brother.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed that conversation about Love Lies Bleeding. Thanks to Daniel for joining me on that one, and thank you to all of you for listening. If you're enjoying piecing it together, of course, make sure you are subscribed because we got a lot of episodes on the way. At the time that I recorded this one, it was like 6 episodes in 1 week, and I'm sure whenever this is coming out and you're hearing it, there's probably a bunch more in the can waiting to come out. So make sure you're subscribed, and while you're at it, maybe drop us a little 5-star rating and review. That would be very helpful. You could also follow us on social media at PiecingPod, join our Facebook group Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, where we continue the conversation about all the movies we talk about here on the show. I already told you about the Patreon at the top of the show, but just a reminder, it's the Produced by David Rosen Patreon. You can find it at patreon.com/bydavidrosen. And I appreciate your support. Keep listening, keep sharing. Send in your puzzle pieces. If you thought of a puzzle piece for Love Lies Bleeding that we didn't bring up, send it in. You can do it on social media. You could email me on our website, piecingpod.com. You could comment directly on the episode on Good Pods if that's where you're listening. And otherwise, yeah, I'd love hearing from listeners, so do get in touch. I'm going to close this out with a piece of music like I always do. And I think for this one, I'm going to go back a few years ago. I did music for a ballerina video and then ended up releasing the song as its own single. It's called Destined For Greatness, and I feel like this music kind of fits with Jackie's story of trying to, win this championship and perfect herself and everything. And so, yeah, I'm going to go with Destined for Greatness to close this episode out. Hope you enjoy it. It is available on Spotify, Apple Music, all those places. And we'll be back with more Piecing It Together real soon.
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.